Chloe, on the other hand, chose not to say anything. Meanwhile, John and Amole were surprised to realize that they had finally managed to get everything right. They were eager to practice a little more before the play, and Yana agreed since the experience was becoming increasingly immersive. They decided to wait for Chloe to see them before the day ended. At that moment, John's phone rang, and upon checking it, they found a message from Chloe. In the message, she informed them that she wouldn't be able to go see them that day, which left Amole somewhat sad. On the other hand, Chloe also sank into sadness, questioning why she remembered what she saw in the auditorium with the two boys. She scolded herself internally, recognizing that she shouldn't be doing that. However, she calmed down instantly, murmuring that she should never have allowed that indiscretion. The next day, we find John outside Chloe's apartment waiting for her to leave together. However, as time passed, the situation became a bit strange. Chloe, meanwhile, lay in her bed. John heard someone opening the door, but to his surprise, it was someone else who mistook him for Chloe. Confused, he didn't know what to do and decided to leave alone, thinking Chloe might have been busy lately. Meanwhile, Chloe was resting in bed, aware that John and Amole were practicing. These two boys had occupied her time as the blonde managed all the details for the play and didn't have time to see them. At that moment, they heard a familiar voice, the same goddess who often visited them. Although her arrival cheered up the boys, her expression showed exhaustion from the work she'd been doing. This motivated John and Amole to give their best in the play. As everyone prepared things, An and Amole were trying on their costumes. Before the play, they had to rehearse one last time. Ami, in particular, seemed the most affected by the situation. The next day, we see Chloe talking on the phone and trying on her dress for the play. Although she thought it was somewhat outdated, I personally think she looked perfect. Despite feeling uncomfortable with the infrequent use of heels, she prepared to leave. At that moment, she heard someone calling her. It was John, who complimented her on her lovely outfit. Chloe was confused since she hadn't expected to see him there, and together they headed to the university. However, neither said anything, and Chloe was completely nervous. This got to the point where both noticed it. Chloe pointed out John's nervousness, suggesting he buy something to relax. Preferring to know how she was, this confused her, but timidly she said she was fine. John explained that due to his nerves, he knew he worried about his teammates and that they had relied heavily on her help despite her being busy. He apologized for seeking her out and thanked her for the time she gave them, even if it wasn't much, and he was glad she wasn't sick. He promised to give his best effort in the play, while Chloe didn't fully hear him, as she was lost in her thoughts trying to process his words. Believing it was a coincidence didn't make sense to her. While she was stammering, she suggested they review the script since everything was fine. John mentioned that he had done so while thinking of her teachings, which embarrassed Chloe even more. John offered to buy her some water, noticing how red she had become. At that moment, she grabbed his wrist, and John noticed her trembling, thinking she was also nervous about the play. Instead, Chloe hugged him as her heart was about to burst, fearing that John would hear how fast it was beating. He was confused by her action. Although John was about to say something, Chloe told him she didn't want him to be cheerful because, in her thoughts, she didn't want him to hear her heart, as that embarrassed her. She acknowledged John's and Amole's efforts, knowing they would do well, which John appreciated. However, Chloe secretly wanted him to hear her heartbeat. Later in the auditorium, we see Professor Yelena arriving to watch the play, noticing how many people were there. Some people commented that it was because a celebrity had thrown a party in the building next door, which is why there were so many people. Yelena was impressed with how well Han had organized the date and time, but she still thought there were too many people. Intrigued, she waited for it to start. Meanwhile, Chloe thanked everyone for their efforts, encouraging them not to worry if they made mistakes, reminding them that they were in a club and could do whatever they wanted while having fun and giving their best. Han asked Chloe to get ready, as the blonde would finally present the play, feeling happy for the opportunity she had given her. Chloe looked completely confident until she hit the wrong note during her presentation, causing the girls on the staff to start laughing upon hearing it. Despite that and the embarrassment Chloe felt, the play finally began, and the first to take the stage was our dear Amole. Thus, time passed in the play with the audience entertained and the actors enjoying themselves. The other girls were attentive to everything, and of course Amo was happy. In one scene, Yelena observed how well organized and entertaining the show was, as well as noting how attractive the boys were. On the other hand, John and Amoy watched their companions' performances, knowing that when it was their turn, they would do better than in rehearsals. Amole loved acting in a play, but she also felt that this feeling would come to an end someday. The process of creating a play, everyone flowing together, felt as if they were connected, and that was what Amole liked. She also highlighted how well Leon acted, thinking she looked cute when she was motivated, Emily pointed out to Leon that she felt more comfortable and happy to have her by her side. For Leon, the feeling was mutual. He felt comfortable with her acting partner. Both were happy with the practices they had with Chloe, as it was even more fun, and they hoped it would happen again. When they saw Chloe, they called her to join them. The blonde reminded them that it was almost the last scene, so they needed to be ready, to which they nodded. However, before going on, John wanted to hear some final words from his vice president. This embarrassed Chloe, and in a timid manner, she thanked them for their good work and for having fun until the end. She didn't forget to mention how much fun she had by their side and thanked them for overcoming difficulties. In response, John and Amole patted her, noting how cute she was. It was time for Amo and John to go on stage, both ready to face the performance. Despite the possibility that Amole might make a mistake, she trusted that Leon would support her. Even if it was a small error, both would give their best effort, preparing for everything like intestines and squid. In the final act, Amole stood under a streetlight, impressing the audience with her beauty. At that moment, John arrived at her side, and all the girls were nervous because Amole looked spectacular, and John seemed to be her partner in the scene. Finally, Amole lunged forward, and as we already know, Emmy preferred not to see it because it was a kiss between Amo and Jeon. This surprised Yelena, and as it was a direct kiss, each of the girls showed their expressions based on what they felt about this act. With a hug, the show ended, leaving a silence in the auditorium. However, when the lights came on, the audience applauded the wonderful show, offering a spectacular ovation that left both protagonists and Chloe pleased. After the great play, they went to celebrate. In John's thoughts, all the effort was worth it. It was something refreshing and fun in his life. During rehearsals, he noticed the presence of new members he didn't know before and realized the effort everyone put in to bring the play to life. After the show, they had a meeting with everyone, noticing the presence of a teacher who had seemingly appeared out of nowhere. Seeing how excited everyone was, he knew it wasn't just a simple meeting. Chloe, by the way, was already a little drunk, something John noticed. Hoping she could still move, John had to carry Chloe again, something he already expected, though he could barely manage. Chloe encouraged him to keep going. Because of how the blonde was acting, John knew it had been a great day. When they arrived at Chloe's house and entered the password, they were able to open the door easily since Chloe was now back in her cozy home. However, due to the exhaustion, Jeon wanted to sleep there for a while. Despite proposing to sleep in her bed with her, John thought he would have a separate mattress to stay on. It was then that Chloe pointed out the great work they had done, but he gave all the credit to Chloe for being such a good teacher. Although she found all of this funny because she didn't see it that way at the time, Chloe wanted to tell the boy something. This was that when she watched them practicing, she felt bad for making them uncomfortable and apologized for it. Even though John was confused because Chloe helped them succeed, he made one thing very clear. He never felt uncomfortable during the practices because he knew Chloe cared for everyone. What embarrassed him was saying it out loud. Chloe couldn't say anything about it, but she approached John to apologize, even though he didn't see any problem. Chloe saw his effort, the good teammate he was, and his kindness, saying he was also good with words and above all cute, repeating the last part. Then she gave Leon a kiss. This kiss lasted quite a while, but when it ended, John was confused. While Chloe was blushing and determined about what she had done, though she couldn't say anything, John was embarrassed and thought it was time to leave. But before he could, Chloe grabbed his wrist, asking where he was going. Bored as she was, she wanted to keep talking. John crouched down and explained to Chloe that, given their current state, he suggested they go to sleep and talk the next day. Chloe understood this, but didn't care. What she really wanted was to stay by his side that night. John noticed Chloe's innocent expression, which seemed unfair because of how cute she looked at that moment. She hugged him, asking for forgiveness, continuing to say that she was a sly and annoying person, asking him not to leave. After a while, John told her that his first impression of her wasn't good because every time she looked at him, it was with a stern face, and she never stopped. He assumed that was her personality. He asked Chloe why she always looked at him that way, though the girl didn't remember why she did it. John continued explaining that when he met other people, they always told him how kind Chloe was, so he assumed that when he heard that, she might have done something. However, over time, John wondered how Chloe could be so diligent. When he didn't get a response, he thought Chloe had already fallen asleep, but she was staring at him, listening intently. John asked her if she was sleepy, but Chloe wasn't. She wanted to keep talking. On the contrary, John was tired and dizzy. At that moment, Chloe told him her heart was pounding and that she wasn't sleepy at all. While holding his hand and seeing how cold it was, she started kissing it to warm it up, making John even more nervous. Despite pulling back a little, Chloe wanted him to see and feel how fast her heart was beating, asking him if it was true because it was thanks to him. After that, Chloe kissed Leon, asking why he kissed so well, something he didn't believe. However, she noted that the position of the kiss wasn't supposed to be that way. Chloe didn't know this since it was her first time and asked him to teach her. They kept kissing after that, but as it reached the point where the Lord's words started to appear, before they did anything, Chloe pointed out to John that he looked like her meal, which confused him. It seemed like he had made her uncomfortable, generating a silence between them until Chloe laughed and told him it would be her first Mass, and she didn't know anything about the Lord's Word. Despite being smart, she knew nothing about the Bible, embarrassing John. Chloe kept laughing at his expression, and he appreciated how cute she looked. Surprising Chloe, they reviewed the first paragraphs of the Bible. At one moment, Chloe felt so embarrassed that she wanted to cover herself with something, but they continued with the Lord's Word. In the shower, Chloe remembered everything that had happened moments earlier, blushing as she recalled preaching halfway through. She felt as if she were on cloud 9, seeing St. Peter, unable to believe what she had done. She seemed crazy, as if a demon was coming out of her. She had to leave the shower because she couldn't stay there. Upon leaving, Chloe realized Leon wasn't there, which depressed her, and she was on the verge of tears from not seeing him. At that moment, John spoke to her from the couch, where he was falling asleep and apologizing for it. Chloe clarified what had happened, but John couldn't leave someone in such poor condition alone in the bathroom. Now that she was out, he could leave, but she sat beside him because she wanted to stay a little longer with him, talking for a while. This embarrassed her as she said it, so John laughed and agreed to stay and talk, thinking Chloe loved to chat. He also asked if she had siblings because somehow he sensed it. Chloe thought about it, knowing that when she was with this boy, she did things she wouldn't do with anyone else. Answering his question about whether she had an older brother, Chloe added that the feeling of discovering a new emotion made her heart keep racing. Now Chloe wanted to know more about whether Leon had a brother or sister, which he did. Chloe, in her thoughts, loved all of this because she hadn't had to worry about how to act or what to say for a while. Now she would admit that she really liked Leon. After a while, Chloe fell asleep on Leon's shoulder, which he noticed. Like a true gentleman, he carried her to her bed, tucked her in, and removed her glasses so she could sleep, leaving them to the side and also wishing her good night. He then headed to his room. The next day, we see Chloe trembling because everything hurt, but she was waiting for someone. This someone was Leon, but when she didn't see him come out, she thought he had already left. However, he was just coming out, so she pretended not to see him so he would greet her first. That's how John greeted her, and she apologized for all the trouble she had caused, trying to keep her voice steady, which was difficult because of her nerves. For Leon, though, it hadn't been any trouble at all. Both were now heading to the university, but neither said a word. Chloe internally wanted to talk about something but didn't know what, though she finally admitted that she felt awkward and asked what he thought. John also didn't know how to respond, but he had been thinking of plenty of ways to ensure his vice president didn't feel uncomfortable. This made her blush, but she asked him to say her name. That's how he repeated his thoughts, but now using Chloe's name, which embarrassed her even more. Even though she said she wasn't uncomfortable, inside she was overwhelmed with tenderness, which made Leon happy. After that, Chloe asked what they should do, but in truth, she wanted things not to stay as if nothing had happened. John noticed this, turned his head and agreed with Chloe, realizing he couldn't act that way. This made Chloe happy, and she said she would keep that in mind. She decided to stop there because if she said anything else, her heart wouldn't be able to take it. Meanwhile, in the club room, Professor Yelena was observing how secure the room was and assumed it was Jana's doing. However, she also noticed that there was absolutely no one there and thought it was a prank on her. At that moment, she started calling Han on the phone, asking her what time she was going to arrive, which surprised the girl. A while later, we see Han running in the distance, completely out of breath from everything she did. Even so, Yelena complimented her on how good she looked. Han asked why she had arrived so early. The professor thought the meeting was at 10, but Han clarified that it was at 1 o'clock sharp. Yelena apologized for having misheard, though this didn't bother Han since she was going to get up anyway. Han had already given her the code to enter, but Yelena didn't want to because if someone arrived while she was alone, she wouldn't be able to explain why she was there. However, they had had a meeting the previous day, and everyone already knew her. Yelena appreciated how clean the room was, but Han was annoyed about something that hadn't been picked up. She also asked Yelena to wait while she went to change, which confused the professor. However, since she had left her house quickly, Han said she would change in the parking lot, which Yelena understood. Yelena also offered to bring her something to drink, and Yelena just asked for water. Han then pointed to a note that said, "If you want water, you have to pay." Yelena found this hilarious because not only did you have to pay for the water, but it was boiled as well. After a while, Jeon and Chloe saw Han heading to the parking lot. Chloe noticed that, due to her hurried outfit, Han must have left in a rush and assumed it was because she was busy. John remembered that something was going to be announced today, which seemed to explain why they had arrived early. When they reached the club room, they saw the door open, so they thought it was someone new who had arrived before everyone else. As they walked in laughing, they saw Professor Yelena talking on the phone, unaware of their presence. Both students didn't know her, and Yelena continued her call. When she finished, she was angry because another professor always teased her, and she was ready to send him to heaven for ruining her good day with that call. When she turned around and noticed the two students were there, they were startled by what she said. However, they pretended they hadn't heard anything and were planning to have coffee as they were about to leave. Yelena, flustered, apologized, saying she wasn't the kind of person who used vulgarities, or only sometimes. After a while, Yelena explained that she would be the club's advisor, which was the reason for the meeting. Chloe understood because Han wasn't good at explaining things, especially since the advisor position had been vacant. However, Yelena had spoken with Han about this a while ago, and after seeing everyone's performance in the play, she decided to take on the role. She also mentioned that everyone looked lovely to her and praised Chloe for directing and producing the play. Chloe admitted that it wasn't just her, as everyone had collaborated, especially with Han's support. Yelena was delighted to hear this and asked Chloe to come to her office, knowing that Han cared a lot about her, something Chloe appreciated. While speaking, Yelena noticed Leon and praised the good work he had done for his first time, which he gratefully acknowledged. The professor admitted that even with her, things wouldn't change overnight because she was quite clumsy. However, they prepared to welcome the other club members. Later, Emmy and Emma arrived and received the news that Yelena would be in charge. Both girls were confused. Emma didn't know anything about it, and Emmy didn't want any changes to the way things were. However, this wouldn't happen. The rest of the members arrived and saw that their advisor was the same one from the meeting the previous day. At first, Yelena was cheerful and happy with her presentation, but as more people arrived, her mood shifted, and she began repeating only 3 lines, saying they would all meet again soon to discuss things more deeply. However, since some didn't know who she was, the news got distorted and quickly went viral. People started jumping to conclusions, saying that Han was going to do a master's degree, and they told everyone who arrived. Of course, this news reached Han herself. Han clarified that she had said she would announce something, and she didn't know how they had come to that conclusion. She explained that Yelena would be their new advisor and that she wasn't pursuing a postgraduate degree, which slightly concerned Yelena. While Emmy suspected Yelena lied about her age, Han hoped everyone would learn from Yelena from now on and wished them a good experience. Before concluding, Yelena wanted to thank them again and said she had truly enjoyed their play. Han then explained about their upcoming outing and asked everyone to let her know in advance if they couldn't attend. She also invited Yelena to join them, which Yelena was happy to do, even though Han jokingly suggested she could go with her own money. Han was watching Am, who returned a cold stare, which annoyed Han a bit. She asked Am if she would go, and Am obviously refused. This irritated Han, but to Chloe, the idea of Am taking a break from work and simply enjoying the outing sounded great. At first, Emily wasn't going to participate due to work, but she changed her mind after Chloe mentioned how fun it would be. This also made Am change her mind and decide to go. Despite being quite annoyed, Han praised everyone's hard work and suggested they organize into groups for the outing. She said she would leave the details on a note and see them again next week. John didn't know where they were going, but Emmy commented that it would be to the sea and somewhere expensive. She also mentioned that Emma would need a swimsuit. Meanwhile, Yelena was disappointed that her presentation was so brief and asked for more attention. Chloe, on the other hand, was worried about how her peaceful life had become tense after the incident. Having feelings for someone reminded her of everything she had done. Although she had taken the initiative herself, she was now in internal conflict. Despite her pure-hearted nature, she was battling with herself, both denying and accepting it at the same time. Chloe, being a high school student, had just opened her eyes to a new and sinful world. Her curiosity and enthusiasm to learn about this new world were unstoppable, despite feeling guilty and searching on her own to satisfy her hunger for curiosity. This new world taught her many things, including the clothes she could wear. Although they seemed daring, she refused to put them on because of how embarrassing it was, but her desire was simple, to look pretty, as she was concerned in many ways. Then Emma was contemplating which swimsuit to wear. Although she didn't want something too plain, she stopped playing with them after observing her body. She saw nothing wrong with it and even complimented herself on how beautiful she looked. However, Emmy knocked on her door and startled her as she was about to deliver her food. Emma told her she would be right out and returned with her swimsuit, making sure to put it away before forgetting it. The weekend arrived, and it was the day of the gathering. Some students decided to grab food before leaving. Johan got on the bus and noticed he was lucky to see the front seats unoccupied. He quickly sat down, looking at his phone. Suddenly, someone arrived and sat on his lap. It was Hannah, something unexpected for Leon. Han told him the seat was reserved for her and thought he wanted to sit next to her, though Jeon timidly explained that it was a misunderstanding because he got carsick. Han kept joking while hugging him. Therefore, she stayed with him for a while longer and also sent the address to the others so they could arrive. John wasn't sure if they would come, but Han, intrigued, began to move playfully. At that moment, Emmy arrived, asking what was happening, and seeing Han and Leon in the same seat, she was completely intrigued. She lunged at the two, asking Han not to bother Aeon. Emma got on the bus, and seeing the group, Emmy asked her to join them. Although she didn't understand what they were doing, Emma joined them and sat on Emmy. At that moment, Amo and Chloe arrived, and Emma invited them to join their game. Although the girls didn't understand if they were forming a tower, Hannah didn't want them to join. From outside the bus, there was a lot of noise. Gina, checking what they were doing, saw a tower of girls in rainbow form. While on their way, the girls were having a great time. Some ate and laughed while Hannah and John were sleeping. Gina spoke with her friend Rory to see if she had brought a swimsuit, but she said she would only go out if necessary since she didn't feel the need to show anyone what she had. For that reason, she didn't bring a swimsuit, which Gina found quite funny. While discussing whether Gina had brought a swimsuit for someone, Chloe blushed because she had one she wanted to show someone. Emma was in the same situation. The only one who was proud was Emmy, who knew what she wanted. This angered Rui, who considered bringing a swimsuit to a sacred drinks party inappropriate. Gina thought bringing one was good for games and avoided dirtying clothes, but Rui believed she was overly confident, especially after having eaten and drunk so much the day before. Gina admitted she was overly confident, which upset Rui since she was the only one gaining weight, so they were shouting and playing on the bus, waking Han to quiet them down. By the way, Amole thought swimsuits weren't allowed. Now, boys and girls, I want you to stay calm because the beach part is coming up, where Emma and Gina were excited to reach the sea. However, for Chloe and Han, the latter didn't like the smell, as she found it repugnant. She kept complaining that it wasn't what she expected while Emmy and John made a one-piece reference. To Han, Emma and Gina seemed crazy, and she wanted to go home. Chloe noted that her president wasn't romantic at all. Upon arriving at the house where they would be staying, it was incredibly large with beautiful views. Hanana was explaining how they would sleep in the two spacious rooms, trembling at the thought of how expensive the place they were staying in was. Hanan didn't see a problem with it, but wanted everyone to take advantage of the facilities and have fun. Even so, she asked them not to get lost and to return by dinner time. Hannah decided to take Chloe to meet the teacher. Some of the boys were organizing the rooms and making space in the fridge for the drinks. They realized there was a pool, and Rui, not seeing Chloe, thought about going to karaoke, which caused laughter since they were at the beach. Gina suggested taking a walk while Emma was excited. Emmy opted to stay and rest, and most of the girls left, leaving only a few in the room. Those who stayed explored the incredible bed while Emmy rested on the couch. Later, she proposed to Jeon to go see the sea, which he gladly accepted, and Emmy ran outside to head to the beach. John and Emmy were together. Ani asked John to catch her in exchange for giving him a little tap if he succeeded. While talking, Emmy noticed they hadn't had much time alone. John realized she wanted him to focus solely on her. They enjoyed their time together, and Emmy expressed her admiration for John's performance in the play. Although John doubted his performance, she praised his role as the protagonist, and John was happy to hear it. Emmy imagined Aeon as the lead actor and admitted she would simply kiss him without hesitation. Then she dropped to the ground next to Aeon, feeling the cold wind but the warm ground. John was happy, and Emmy was too, but now they would return home. Emmy grabbed his hand, and when he looked at her, she blushed. John thought Emmy was admiring something else, but she denied it. When they arrived at the resort, Gina and Rui wanted to know where the redhead had gone, thinking something interesting had happened. The girls had already bought plenty of meat for the barbecue but couldn't find a suitable place to grill it. The idea of using a frying pan was dismissed because of the elegance of the place, and they joked about grilling it on the sofa, calling it sofa-flavored stew because they found it funny. Rui thought that Han didn't know how to barbecue and had no idea about its origins. At that moment, the door to the room opened, revealing Hannah, Chloe, and Yelena arriving. Hannah asked them to call everyone because it was time to eat, confusing the girls since they didn't know where to grill the meat. However, they soon discovered that the meat would be cooked over embers, and the girls were delighted to see the delicious food. Gina mentioned that Rui thought Hannah was a rich girl who didn't know anything about the real world.